でもちょっと今日本語ちょっと忘れた。I remember the first Speed King pedal I played on this old Ludwig kit we had at in the high school. So when I was in 5th grade, we had band class, and we would have to go. So my little town, there was 2 schools, one elementary school, one first grade through 6th grade, and then on the other side there was like another building that was 7th grade through 12th grade. Well, in 5th grade we had music class, and we would go over to the other building, to the high school where all the old kids were, and we would sit in band class. Well, we went over there, and there was this like white mid-70s beautiful, I don't remember what make that was, it would have been like early 70s, mid-70s Ludwig, and the thing sounded just amazing, because I had a Maxwin kit, and it just didn't, you know, it was a good little kit.
Yeah, for
it didn't sound like those Ludwig sounded.
It's like a real deal drum set.
A real deal drum set.
Oh, nice.
I forget what make that was, but it had like a superphonic snare.
Oh, nice. It's best snare drums in the world.
Right.
All right.
And a Ludwig Speed King pedal. So I would, and the room, it was like a music room, and it sounds so good. So I went over there, and we had to play like, you know, I was playing the snare drum, you know, but I wanted to play the drum set.
Sure.
So I would go and sit down on that drum set and just start, and I could play already at that point, and I remember the teacher was always like yelling at me and stuff.
Yelling?
But yeah, but then
you're too loud.
I got kicked out of band. That's later.
Why?
When I got into 7th grade for playing that drum set. So okay, so that's my first, you know,
Speed King experience.
And a really nice drum set experience. So now I started playing. We had a band. And then fast forward to when I was in 7th grade, and we had moved over to that other building, you know, so I was actually in the band, and I wanted to be the kit player.
Sure.
So I'd be, you know, I was still on the snare drum, and then the xylophone, I think, was the other one I played, and maybe the
bells.
Now, you know, I'm playing the triangle and the snare drum, the xylophone. I want to play on the drum set. But someone else got the drum set gig.
Oh, okay.
So, but you know, I was playing a lot at that time, not to, you know, whatever, but I could play pretty good enough to play what we were playing in the band. So anyway, every time there was a break, I would run over to the drum set and sit down, and I'd be like, you know, we'd be on a break, and I'd start playing. And
quiet, right?
Quiet. And then, you know how it is, you're playing quiet, and pretty soon you're louder and louder. And I was doing like Bonham triplets.
Oh, yeah.
And at that point, I just started, you know, after the Kiss thing, I started getting into Led Zeppelin, and I heard John
you know what? That's my next question.
Sure.
So, who is your heroes? Let me say something before you open your mouth. So, according to last night, I saw so many Neil Peart. How do you say Neil Peart? Neil Peart and John Bonham. So
certainly, yeah.
These guys are your heroes.
The initial hero was Peter Criss.
Great.
You know, and then, but then I heard John Bonham. After the Kiss thing, I heard Led Zeppelin. I heard John Bonham, and that just changed everything. It
Sure.
was like, okay, this is a whole another new level, another you know, world. So then I was all about John Bonham. You know, it was John Bonham, and then I went through a lot of other phases, rock drummer phases.
Like,
you know,
give me some names, please.
Neil Peart.
Sure.
Alex. I was totally into the Rush thing, and then, you know, it was Alex Van Halen. I was into Phil Rudd, and then, you know, a lot of the progressive guys back in those days. There was like Rod Morgenstein was a cat.
Rod Morgenstein.
Dixie Dregs guy.
Okay.
Terry Bozzio. Terry was another guy that was, you know, is definitely in that top 10 of, you know, those rock, progressive. You know, he was like on another level because he could play jazz, he could play
he plays
fusion,
right?
He could play the whole thing, and just his fire was like, he had this fire that no one ever.
Have you heard Heavy Metal Bebop by Black Brothers? Yeah, sure. Everybody knows it.
And there's all the Zappa stuff. So that was another big influence. Terry, Alex, you know, and the rock guys, straight up like Phil Rudd. I just loved the pocket and the power that he had. And then, you know, I'm summarizing here. There's a lot of stuff that I got into, like Bill Ward from Black Sabbath was another guy.
Oh, nice.
But then I got into my teens, and I started hearing this other stuff, you know. And then I remember hearing Rumble from Electric Band, and it was like this whole nother style.
They were cool?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
And when that came out, you know, it was, I want to say it was
80 something, yeah, I know that.
86?
It's before Acoustic Band, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the first record. I want to say it was 86. And when I heard that, I was like, what is this? Where does it all come from? And then I had another metamorphosis happen in my teens where I was like, what is this Dave Weckl stuff? And where does it come from? And then I looked into that, and then I discovered, you know, Steve Gadd.
Fusion guys.
And then all the fusion dudes.
Vinny
and
Colaiuta.
And then Vinny a little bit later.
Oh, later, okay.
And Chambers. But, you know, in those days it was Weckl, Chambers, and Vinny, and Gadd. And then the jazz guys, you know. And then I was already, I mean, there's so many things I went through at that point. But I got into a band. I moved away to the city. I don't know if I'm getting off on a tangent.
No.
You're talking about...
No.
Basically, but the early influences, those guys that I just mentioned.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mention, though, after I moved away, I enrolled at a jazz school in Edmonton.
Oh, you went to school before you
came
to LA.
Yeah. I was in rock bands. We were touring around Canada, and then
so means you made money, right? So you are kind of
playing
professional.
rock. But I wanted to figure out. It felt like to me, I needed to really figure out what all this other stuff was, because if I was going to do this for a living, I needed to know what jazz was, like really what it was, where it came from, and fusion and Latin and all these other styles. I just felt like I was cheating myself if I didn't take it upon myself to figure out what this music was, because I loved it, you know. And if I was going to be anything other than a rock drummer, I'm going to have to know what this stuff is and know how to play it.
Yeah.
So that's when I just totally immersed myself in the jazz thing. You know, I went to school and I spent 6 months learning, because I was kind of catching up the reading stuff, because I cheated to get into the school.
You cheated?
For the audition, part of it was, you know, you had to kind of read music.
But you played mallets too, don't you? Barely?
No, I don't at all.
Oh, okay.
I don't at all. And the only reason I got in there, I mean, you had to know kind of basic theory to get in there. And I cheated off my friend, because I sat next to him in the audition that he was enrolling in the college too. And I didn't know anything about like scales or, you know, the staff or, you know, I could maybe barely read like some eighth note rhythms. You know, like maybe some eighth note rhythms I could read, but I certainly didn't understand what diatonic scales were. So I kind of cheated off him. And I got into that school, and it was just heavy reading. Like it was like a jazz curriculum, and you had to, you know, there was piano courses.
What's the name of the school?
Grant McEwen. It was a college. It was a community college in Edmonton, Alberta.
Okay, cool.
So I got into that, and then it was just like bombarded with all this reading stuff, you know. So it took me about 6 months before I could kind of catch up to where I could just, you know, maintain the level of reading where we were at, because I was just so far behind the curve. But during that time, you know, I discovered I got into like the Art Blakeys and Mac Roaches and all the old jazz dudes, you know, Tony Williams and
he's my hero.
All those cats. And I really wanted to, I kind of became like a jazz snob for a while, really, where I just kind of, I started to not, you know, I wasn't into rock for a minute, which is kind of weird, because I was such a rock dude. But I was so in it, and I saw Max Roach.
Oh, you told me that.
And it was like great. He was like 88 or something.
Did you copy his drum solo?
I couldn't. Yeah, right. Yeah, I did. Probably for that, you know, when I shedded that stuff in college. But then I got, at the end of college, it was a 2-year program to get an associate's degree. I did the 1 year, and then we had break, and I was planning on coming back for the second year, but then I auditioned for a band that was kind of like a little big deal in that area. Like they were working constantly. And so I got into that band because I just felt like I needed to get out and start playing. And make some money, you know.
Of course.
So I did that for a while, and then I got into another band, which led into another band called Hell's Bells, which was kind of like a you know.
Sounds like a rock band.
It was an AC/DC tribute band. But
okay.
we were touring across, you know, the country in Canada. In those days, there was a big scene, a big market for cover bands in clubs. You'd be playing like 6 nights a week, 3 sets a night.
Oh, you made pretty good money.
And you'd make pretty good money.
Right?
Yeah, like for a kid, early 20s, we were playing all the time.
It's a steady gig.
Yeah, so steady gig, and we'd work like, you know, whatever, 48 weeks out of the year or something.
That's great.
So there was that, and that was sort of like there was a heyday of that scene, the late 80s and early 90s. And then from there, I actually got in a band with Paul Dean from Loverboy, who's kind of a famous band.
So familiar.
Loverboy was a famous pop band.
Loverboy.
They had a lot of big hits. And Paul Dean was the guitar player, producer, and writer, who was like the main guy in Loverboy. And I ended up going to play with him in Vancouver. So I moved to Vancouver, and I was there about 3 years. I played with Paul for about, I don't know, 6 months or something, and then it kind of, he couldn't afford to pay it. This whole scene changed at that point in the early 90s, and there wasn't, all the clubs started to close down, so there just wasn't all those places to play like there used to be.
Oh, not like it used to be anymore.
So then I just started to play, you know, other types of gigs, like R&B gigs and whatever, blues gigs and stuff, just to kind of, you know, pay the rent.
You took everything that pops up.
Yeah, in Vancouver, and I was basically kind of just working around Vancouver for about 3 years before I came down to LA to study at MI.
That's my next question.
Okay.
Basic stupid question.
Well, being Canadian, we had a visa issue. You know, you can't just come to the States.
Tell me about that.
You can't just come to the States and work. Yeah, because you know why.
Sure.